Shut up, compressor. Hey everyone, Matt here with Dukes Models. I just got done with all the video editing and uploading and queuing and scheduling and all the shit that has to go along with wrapping up the P47M build. And so tonight, I finally get to bust into the next projects. And I say projects because there are more than one. So let's get into it. First one you can kind of see over here behind me, sitting on the bench, is Trumpeter's 1/32 scale A6E tram intruder. It's a big old fuselage. Now, I actually started this kit 5 years ago. I went and looked at the photos, and it literally said April 2015. So it's been hanging out, not really on the shelf of doom, but just the shelf of, I just don't have the motivation for it right now. I don't know. It's literally been sitting in the bottom of the display cabinet, just hanging out. And for whatever reason, I decided it'd be a great time to take it on again. So I've already done some work on it. I've been through the whole tape test fitting of the major components. Everything fits pretty well, to the point where I would maybe be willing to call this Trumpeter's best kit. Maybe, at least of the ones I've touched, it's up there with, like, the Dauntless and things like that. I'm sure I'll encounter something that I'll hate because it's Trumpeter and they always have to throw some sort of curveball. But some work has already been done. So I'll probably throw up a picture instead of trying to show this on the camera, but the cockpit is already pretty well. The seats basically need clear coats to dull them down and oils and things like that. The instrument panel I'm actually extremely happy with, even 5 years on. The cockpit tub itself, I'm happy-ish, but less so. And honestly, I think it's one of those things that I could maybe do a better job of it with, that additional 5 years of experience and all that kind of stuff. So I have actually ordered a spare U-sprue that has the cockpit tub in it. And I might not decide to give it another go. We will basically just have to find out. As far as the rest of the kit, there are basically two big areas of concern that I have to work through as I kind of get this thing built. And one of them I've actually gone ahead and knocked out. And that is, when I flashed it up briefly, the intakes. So the kit intakes they're fine. They're plastic, they're multi-piece, they've got a seam in them and all that stuff. I'd rather have seamless, it's just more fun that way. And so basically, past 2 nights after doing all the video editing bullshit, I did the awesome hacksaw job of removing the parts necessary to fit these. So there's still some filling that will have to happen on the inside of the crew ladder compartment here, towards the forward end, but that's basically it. I mean, other than that, these things fit and they're pretty much good to go. I do have some plans that I will get to in a little bit on how I'm planning to tackle these intakes, even though they're white. Gulf War era tram intruders intakes weren't really white anymore, so something needs to happen there. Also, my approach will simplify by not needing any masking with the lip of the intake. So stay tuned for that. The other big conundrum with this kit, and it's actually frustrating because the 148th Hobby Boss kit does a better job of it, is the wings. Now, the connection point from the wing to the fuselage is rock solid, and basically it gives you zero room for error in that you really can't fuck it up. It slots in with so much authority that it's just going to fit the way it fits, and that's all. The challenge is on the wing fold. Now, obviously, the Intruder is a naval aircraft, the wings fold and all that kind of stuff. I found the actual fold mechanism, so if you want to have the wings posed in their folded position, I found it super janky. Maybe 5 years later, I'll go back and look and be like, it's not that bad. I can work with it. But at the same time, I don't know. I think folded wings on aircraft, I don't know. They just don't do it for me. I'd much rather have this thing with the wings splayed out. Something about the shape of the Intruder with the wings down just has always worked for me. So what they give you to secure these two giant stretches of wing is literally this little pin. It's shoves into one side, and then shoves into the other side, and you get a floppy ass wing because there's just that. So obviously that's not gonna work. I'm sure it could if I just wanted to go in here and do that, lock them in, glue it, use that just to like hold it long enough to glue everything, so it's hard. But fully splayed out wings on a 1/32 intruder, we're talking a big plane. I think that's actually a bigger wingspan than a B-25, and it's a lot of room to deal with in the display cabinet. Might even be too big. So what I ideally want is the ability to have the wings separate and just come in whenever I want and stick them together. The fit down here needs a little bit of sanding with this little lower hinge bump area up against the pylon. That's not a big deal. The upper piece, I believe there's a piece that just drops in there. Another thing that's not that big of a deal. I might even magnetize it. The bigger concern is getting some sort of strengthening rod running a longer length and secured to the actual wings themselves. So that's one where I might base it on this actual pin as kind of a starting point, because this pin gives us a good sense of size and depth and all that sort of stuff, right? We've got this collar of a certain diameter right here in the middle and a certain length, and we've got the rod itself, and just it's a matter of lengthening those and then putting some internal supports in the wings so that maybe this piece plugs into a tube that's about the same size as the collar right on the inside, and that collar is trussed to the wings in various ways, so shit will just hold. That's the hope. That's the dream. We'll find out if I can actually make that happen. So basically, that's the intruder. My plan in terms of markings and weapons load and all that stuff, I'm planning to do a VA-65 Tigers intruder, so serving in the, let's see, was that the Persian Gulf? I think it was. The one on the Kuwait side. And basically, I've got markings for a couple of them. I don't want to do the Garfield one. I don't want to do 503, the desert camo one, just mainly because the desert camo was a bust, and they removed it because it didn't work. So it seems kind of silly to paint the thing in camo that didn't work. And honestly, for me, the quintessential intruder is always going to be the one on the Topps Desert Storm trading cards that I grew up with. And so straight up dirty beat the shit TPS for me. So I'm going to be doing Cupcake 511, I believe, and trying to paint as many of the markings as I can. Will basically be, again, pushing the limits of the silhouette. I have no fear for the tail or the Modex numbers, probably the insignia even. But when it comes to things like, the USS Theodore Roosevelt, the little script over the air brake, don't know if I'll be able to pull that off. So we've got some AOA decals to cover the rest of it, basically. In terms of loadout, so one thing that VA-65 did a lot of was surface patrol, basically hunting. I didn't really realize until I was reading up on it, but hunting the Iraqi Navy, of all things. And so the common loadout for that, so that they didn't have to drop bombs or dump fuel or anything like that before recovering, was 2 Rockeyes on multiple ejector racks on the outer stations at the very back bottom. So one little ass bomb hanging off the back of a MIR on the outside stations. On the inside stations, they have something called the AGM-123 Skipper 2, which is basically the most, it sounds like a tale of duct tape and zip ties. It is a GBU-16, so 1,000-pound Paveway smart bomb with Shrike motors basically bolted to the back. So smart bomb that was just cobbled together into a missile. I love how ridiculous it is. The fun thing is, nobody makes one. at all. There is not a GBU 16 and 1/32nd scale that I know of outside of like some really hard to find flight path one. Shrikes, thankfully, are easy enough to find. So I think in Trumpeter's, one of Trumpeter's weapon sets, there's something similar-ish that I can adapt. And if not, I can always throw paveway shit onto a 1,000-pound bomb and make it that way. But that's my plan as of now, is to do the SUCAP loadout, just because it's weird and I like weird loadouts, and it means not having to paint like 16 fucking rock eyes. So that is that. Okay, so that just about covers off on the Intruder. But I said builds, so what else is there? Well, there's this guy. Tamiya's P38F. This kit I've seen built a number of times, and honestly I hadn't really planned on building one because their schemes are pretty much all the same. It's all drab over neutral gray for all the P38Fs and Gs. But I happened to find a scheme that is still olive drab over neutral gray, but has some interesting markings. Is an Operation Torch aircraft as opposed to a lot of the South Pacific type ones that you see floating around. So it's a little bit different. And honestly, I've heard so many rave reviews of this kit's engineering that I just have to see what all that's about, because I'm a sucker for a well-engineered kit. In terms of aftermarket for this, decals and masks. I actually found masks for the markings that I'm doing. So I may not have to bust out Illustrator and the silhouette and all that, but I also may, because I may hate the mask's design. I've also got some Ultracast wheels, an Ultracast seat, which I may or may not use. I've got some HGW belts heading my way from Hobby World USA. I've got, where the fuck is it? I've got Edwards cockpit set, which I'm not planning to use, because honestly I was looking through the instructions and the amount of cutting and whatnot for the marginal amount of detail that you gain just doesn't seem worth it. I don't want to give up Tamiya's amazing engineering to add a little fucking button that you're not going to see anyway. What I did get this for was basically the canopy framing, and B, the radio gear, because I've heard the radio gear in the Tamiya kit isn't that great. So probably just be able to hot swap that stuff and not worry about it. Yeah, and then the other thing I need to crack on this is when you look at the center fuselage, basically on either side of the cockpit gondola, the standard, pictures and stuff show all kinds of chipping, especially on the port side where the pilot climbs out and all that. And it also shows back there in that area rivet detail, which you don't really see on much of the Jug, or the fucking Jug. Jesus, I've still got the P-47 on my brain. Which you don't really see much on the Lightning, but in that one little patch, the center wing section on the other side of the gondola at the back, you see rivets, and you see chipping kind of falling along those rivet lines and things like that. Tony Bell actually did a great job sort of representing that with chipping alone, which blows my mind. I want to try to capture some of the rivet detail. I'm also not sure I want to risk my my shitty riveting skills on a Tamiya kit like that. And so what my plan is to get some HGW wet transfer rivets. They're very subtle anyway. And basically try to see if I can use those in conjunction with chipping and do some fun, interesting stuff. Because this is a Operation Torch Lightning versus a Pacific Lightning, conditions are different. There's more dust, not as much humidity. It's going to be more of like a sand-blasted type of effect that's going on, as opposed to just the constant humidity and sun and things like that just all combining to destroy paint. So it will be a fun, interesting, different paint scheme. I'm still doing a bit of research into how it differed basically across the world from most of the P-38Fs that we see. But that is that. So I am cracking into the Intruder a little bit already, and the Lightning, you want to say Jug, is a fast follower. So stay tuned, videos will be coming. I don't know if it's going to be quite to the same level as it was with the P-47, but it may be, or maybe not. I will keep you all posted. So that's that. Thanks for watching. Keep checking in. Subscribe if you want to be notified when new videos drop, so you can watch them. They don't just get lost in the constant feed of shit that YouTube throws at us every day. And I will keep posting them up on Facebook and the internets and whatnot. And see y'all in a bit. Okay, so that's The Intruder. But I mentioned builds, not build. What else is there? Well, this is going to be a shock to probably nobody. Tamiya's P47F. Oh man, that's great. P47. Got those jugs on the brain. Okay, that pretty much covers The Intruder, but I said builds, so what else is there? Well, there is Tamiya's P47. Oh man. You fucking kidding me? Such bullshit. Oh god. Ah.